Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Feiruz and this is my Eclectic book diary. So today's video is going to be a review of the Witcher series or the Witcher saga. I like to call it the Witcher journey because there is like a main Witcher saga and there are a few books that are related to the whole Witcher series. So the Witcher saga is written by Andrzej Sapkowski. I think the copyrights for the original text in Polish goes back into 1993, and the copyright for the translation it goes back for 2003. So it took a while for these books to be kind of more international thing, but right now I think most people who either read books or especially people who read fantasy books and people who watch TV and people who play games, a lot of people know about The Witcher. Kind of became very, very popular. I'm one of those people who first heard about the games and the TV show before I read the books. I didn't play the games myself, but I know that they exist, and I did watch the TV show before I read the books. The TV show, up until this point, we have only one season, so it's totally fine. There are different things that been interpreted in the TV show that is different from the books. The books themselves are 5 main Witcher saga thing, 5 main novels, and we have 3 other books which include 2 more of a short story collection, also a prequel. So the word Witcher on its own, it's used here as someone who is basically a monster killer, and they go through training from a very, very young age, not a training as a normal training, but they actually go through transformation using magic and a very, very hard thing that they call it mutation. So they go through very, very hard transformation. Those things we learn throughout the books, from bits and pieces, but it's not necessarily the main drive for these whole books, especially for the 5 main novels, the actual Witcher saga. This is not the main aspect of these books. Actually, we have a whole nother plot that is going on. There is something else that we follow throughout these books. This is gonna be a spoiler-free review, so I'm not gonna go into details of what are those things, but I would say that they involve other characters. So we have generally a huge amount of characters that will be introduced during the books. Most of them are not considered main characters, but a lot of those characters are kind of effective throughout the story and they have a role to play in the story. But we do have 4 main-ish characters, including Geralt, which he is our main Witcher. The story evolves around him, but it's not just about him. I like the dynamics that the book creates. I like that we get to see other aspects. We get to see the interaction of Geralt with other characters as well, and we get to see the aspects of him struggling with the idea that he is a Witcher, so he is he doesn't feel emotions like other humans do. It's kind of a complicated situation, and I like that aspect about it. In fact, I love that aspect about it. I also love the dynamic between him and the other main characters. We have another character which is she's a sorcerer, and her name is Yennefer. I think if you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. If you played the games, you also know how important her role in the whole story. Yeah, generally speaking, she is kind of one of the main characters. And another important character of the story is Ciri. Ciri is the princess of Sintra, or that's how things starts. And we get to meet her in the last of Sword of Destiny, which is the 2nd book of the short story collection, and she is essential, a very essential character of the next 5 books or the main saga of The Witcher. So yeah, pretty much the story evolves around her and Geralt and Yennefer, and a very important character as well would be Dandelion, or as he's known from the Polish edition and from the show, Jeskia. And also, since I'm reading the books in German, also his name in German is Rittersporn. Just in case you're not confused enough. I just wanted to make sure to confuse you even further, so... Yeah, so Julian, or Dandelion, I will refer to him as Dandelion because it's my favorite way to actually call him. He is the poet, he is a friend of Geralt, and it's nice to see the dynamic between them because they are polar opposites of each other, and it's kind of nice to see how their friendship develops and how they continue to be friends even though they have almost nothing in common. Anyway, so these are, as I said, the main characters of the story. There are other characters involved in the story, of course, and each book, whether in the short story collections or in the main saga, or even in the last published book, which is actually a prequel, we get to meet all sort of interesting characters, and I like that. And I happen to really enjoy those stories, those characters. All of the books are character driven. It's nice to see how those characters carry out the plot of the story. It's very, very much interesting to see. I feel like this is a strong point of this whole series. We got to level up with the plot through the actual characters. That actually makes me very happy because I find myself really interested a lot in characters more than even plot. Ideally I want both to be great, but generally speaking I would forgive if the plot is not that great, as long as the characters are fully developed or well developed. Yeah, but in this case I didn't feel like a shortage of a plot that much. Maybe it is, maybe I was blindsided by the characters, but generally I really honestly felt that the characters carried the plot very nicely. So those are kind of the great aspects of this whole story. I do have a few things that I didn't really enjoy, and the main thing I would say that I didn't feel very easy about, some of the commentaries by some characters, and therefore also some of the descriptions that are given to certain female characters or things like that. I didn't really care for that. I felt like that was a little bit annoying for me. Not all the time. Sometimes it's okay. It's, at the end of the day, it's a fantasy story. I don't need to approve of every aspect of the book for me to actually enjoy a book. It's fine that I find things that don't really click with me. I don't think that I felt offended. I didn't. You see this all the time. I think a lot of people refer to this as things written by a male gaze, or in a male gaze situation where a description of females are not necessarily the greatest. Didn't prevent me from enjoying the story overall. I feel like there were a lot of things or aspects that were working for a lot of the female characters in the book, and I felt like there are also a lot of strong representation of some female characters, but there are things that felt a little bit out of place or annoying, to say the least. And but I wouldn't say they were vicious. I don't think that they were intended to offend anyone. I know that most of the things that could be offensive shouldn't be relevant to whether you intend it or not. Sometimes it's just things should be vanished from the root, and that's it. I know that, but sometimes I like to give the benefit of the doubt. I don't know, I felt like most of the things were decent enough to pass, but I wouldn't say that it deserves an A+ on that. I feel like there are certain things that could have been improved as a female reader. Sometimes it's a little bit annoying. I totally understand if you felt one way or another. At the end of the day, books can be extremely subjective, especially when it's a fantasy story. You have the full right to just like completely be fully upset with these aspects and not enjoy the story. That's your perspective on the things, and I totally respect that. And also, if you happen to not feel any sort of way about these things, if you don't feel that these are written by male gaze or whatever you want to call them, if you don't feel that the descriptions of certain situation for female characters specifically are of any mean at all to you, then also you're valid to feel whatever you want. This is like your experience. My experience was that in general, I did feel that the overall story did rule for me, and I did enjoy the story overall, and those moments didn't really like spoil the whole book for me. But I did want to mention them because I feel that it's important to talk about them. Even though I really liked the story, I don't just like the story, I loved the Witcher series overall, and I'm currently rereading it, so I enjoyed a lot of aspects about the story, but I felt that there should be a mentioning of these. I feel like it's okay to have both sides, but it's not okay to always keep females in a certain like one category and not really expanding beyond that. And that what annoyed me the most, I feel, of that aspect. But as I said, I know I'm almost contradicting myself, and it sounds a little bit hypocritical when I like hear it right now. But I can't help it. I really like the story overall. I just didn't really jive with specific scenes. Since I talked all about my feelings around the Witcher series, I haven't mentioned the order for you to read the Witcher series, because that's kind of another topic that people kind of confuse sometimes about it. So I will be mentioning the books first in the publication date. So first we have The Last Wish, and then Sword of Destiny, and then Blood of Elves, and then Time of Contempt, and then Baptism of Fire, and The Tower of the Swallow, and The Lady of the Lake, and then we have the prequel, which is Season of Storms. So we have 8 books in total. I think there is another book that is called Something Ends, Something Begins. I don't know if that is actually written by Andrzej Sapkowski or it is fan fiction based. I don't know, but I know that I have read this title somewhere, and I think this has to do with a reimagining of certain events, maybe. I have no idea. I haven't read that. If that is actually written by Andrzej Sapkowski, then this makes the whole Witcher thing 9 books rather than 8 books. But the ones that I'm sure about, those 8. So you can stick to the publication date and read those as I mentioned. And you can also mix and match and play a little bit. Obviously, the 5 novels are already ordered for you, so you don't need to think about that. And even they do have them ordered by number on some editions, such as the editions that I have here. But before those, if you are not sticking to the publication date, I will still recommend you to check out at least The Last Wish. It sets the mood, it gives you a very good representation, what to expect from the whole series. It will be confusing because it's not a linear timeline. You will have a lot of things that feels out of place, but while the stories continue and while you keep reading, you will get to actually enjoy that aspect, to kind of link the things and to know, oh yeah, that was happening at that specific time. You will get to actually understand it. It's not gonna be like something that is very obvious with like a certain timeline with each section that begins, but it is kind of the fun of the whole game. I find it fun. I know that could be very confusing, but I find that type of confusion to be kind of a sweet thing. Other people may find this very disturbing and very deal-breaking, and they wouldn't enjoy the whole thing. But for me, I found it to be very interesting. I still think that reading The Last Wish could be a very good introduction to the whole like Witcher world in general. And yeah, another way you can do is, rather than to read The Last Wish and then reading Sword of Destiny or starting with Blood of Elves, you can also read the prequel, which is Season of Storms. You can read this first thing of all of these. Of course, you can do whatever you want. But generally speaking, I feel like The Last Wish, Season of Storms, Sword of Destiny, and then go into the actual 5 novels, it can give you kind of a full aspect, especially Season of Storms. If you don't mind reading out of order of publication, then I think you would very much enjoy Season of Storms as the second book to read, or even the first one if that's your jam. I personally wouldn't recommend to read Season of Storms as the first book. I think that the beauty about this series is to actually to start with The Last Wish and to experience the confusion that comes with it. I don't know, that's just my opinion, but the best way that I found to be like most interesting is either to stick to publication order or to just simply read Season of Storms after you read The Last Wish, and then to continue with Sword of Destiny and with the rest of the Witcher saga. And also, I know there would be a question of,
what is your favorite book from this series?
I have to say that it's hard for me to actually choose one book and say this is my favorite of them all. But there are a few books that I feel like kind of a certain connection with. Like, for example, I do love the short story collections. I know that's not for everyone. Some people don't really like the whole idea of short stories, but I do. I find them very intriguing and interesting. But I have to say that even though I really liked the idea of being confused by The Last Wish, and I feel like that is a very important aspect of the whole Witcher series, still kind of prefer Sword of Destiny, just because out of the 2 short story collections, I already know about the characters and I already kind of feel connected more, and also we get to meet Ciri in that book as well. I don't know, if I have to pick, I would choose Sword of Destiny, but in my head I like to view them as almost equal. The prequel on its own, I actually find it also very fascinating and very interesting, and I quite loved it, to be honest. And the style of writing was really developed in this book, since it was the last book to be published. I don't know, I felt it was a really good book on its own. It has its, of course, downsides, since I already know what's gonna happen. We already know the conclusion of the whole saga, so it does feel redundant when you look at it from that point of view. But as a book, an individual book, it's kind of a very, very well written book, so I kind of loved it. So yeah, from the whole Witcher saga, the main Witcher saga, the 5 books, I would say that my most enjoyment and the moments that I felt the most throughout the books has to be Baptism of Fire, because also we get to meet one of my favorite characters, which is Regis, I believe. And yeah, I loved that character. He can be very annoying, but I loved him. I have to choose that just because of that aspect. Anyway, it has been a long video, so sorry, but I needed to talk about so many aspects, and it is, after all, a long series, so it could be nice to dive into certain things a little bit more. I hope you enjoyed today's video.